Hey there, how you doing? So we've got the new season upon us, and it starts on the 20th of June 2024. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, that season is known as summer, and if you're in the Southern, it is winter. Now, irrespective of which hemisphere you're in, the start of this season is started because the sun goes past that point of 0 degrees 00 in the sign of Cancer. Now, earlier this year, when we had the start of spring or start of autumn, according to which hemisphere you're in, at the last season point, which was absolutely associated with Aries and the beginning of the astrological year. I spent quite a lot of time talking about the Aries point, or this 0 point energy. I mean, the start of the astrological year, towards, around about the 20th, 21st of March is a pretty epic time. It's the start of the whole ecliptic as the sun leaves the previous cycle at the end of Pisces and goes into Aries. This time we're going to the first quarter point, because the year can be, and if you've looked at your own birth chart, you'll know yourself that the chart is separated into four sections. So you've got like a cross. You've got these two. In fact, let me do it with rulers. That's easier and a bit more graceful. So you've got a horizontal line, like a horizon line, and on one side, this side, I'm doing it back to front. On this side, this is where your ascendant might be, and on this side, this point along your chart represents the descendant. Then you've also got another line, and it's not always bolt upright. Sometimes it's like this, and sometimes it's like that. That's absolutely dependent upon where in the world you're born and what time. But anyway, this particular line creates a point at the bottom, known as the IC. I won't say it in Latin because I'll pronounce it wrong, but it's the IC. It's known as like the line to do with the family, the angle to do with the family. It represents the cusp, starting the fourth house. And then at the top, you've got the MC, also known as the midheaven, which starts the 10th house. And it's an important point. So, whereas in March, I was talking about this particular line from everything that's you, the ascendant, right the way through to everything that is the descendant on this side, which is everything that is not you. So everything that's you, everything that's not you. What we're talking about here is everything that's internal and anchored and homely and familiar versus everything that is public. So we've got private and public, home and away, kind of infancy, childlike, adult. So again, we're working with one of these important lines. One of these cutting lines is setting up a whole new season, and like we have a season in our birth chart represented by these lines, and we also have the actual season that we're all celebrating together and experiencing together. But essentially this June solstice, whether it's a summer solstice or a winter solstice, this particular solstice has a theme to do with the home. It has a theme to do with the fourth house. It has a theme to do with the IC. And so I do want that as a continuous theme, sort of underlaid or sewn into this reading, So, as we're looking at this, all the themes of that area of your chart are emphasized. Now, what does the IC represent? Well, it is like a home point, but I always think of it as an anchoring. It's right at the bottom of the chart and it holds us in place. If you imagine, that your life is like a ship and it's bobbing on the ocean, and sometimes it floats quite well. Sometimes it takes a bit of a wave and it might seem to go down. Sometimes it seems to capsize, roll over, and all sorts of things. But there's usually something that anchors you back to you. There is, if you're here listening today, then you have got through every single bashing of a wave thus far. Something has reminded you of who you are. And I think that is the IC. I think that is the point that absolutely, when the chips are down, a bit like, and maybe in your unique experience, you don't go home, when you have difficulties. However, there is usually a place that we call home, or a place or a person that, like, kids might have a favorite blanket or a teddy bear, an anchoring point, something that reveals to them care, and a place that they want to return to. So this point can be very, very special, and it can cause us a whole heap of pain as well, given that, for a lot of people now, their parents leave home, not necessarily the kids. The parents might dissolve the family home. There's all sorts of different things that, maybe represent that we don't have that physical place, or that place of comfort. So, the IC in your chart will represent all of your attitudes and things that happened to do with your past and your upbringing and your origins. So yeah, that's a little bit of a side, a sidestep, but essentially the Cancer 0 point at 0 degrees in the sign of Cancer represents the cumulative anchoring of the world, we could say. It is that point in the chart that comes up, and it's bringing us that safety. So, I think things like safety, where home is, where our origins are, how were we raised? I think this is about us going back to our roots. Really, really thinking about, who do we belong to? How do we know we belong? And of course, that can raise all sorts of issues, as origins and cultures and things like that really can. It also determines a lot of our behaviors. So, if you think about your own family culture, a lot of your behaviors have been born out of how you're raised. The kind of care that you got will determine your behaviors and maybe what you put out in the world, which is the other point opposite. As you mature and you get more secure, hopefully, it gives you the impetus to go to the top of your chart, which is when you leave home and when you're, out in the world and being you. So the fourth house in this area, the 0 degrees Cancer energy, is typically about this kind of phenomenon. This is the business of 0 degrees Cancer. Now, it might also be worth examining where 0 degrees Cancer falls in your birth chart, because that's the point that is going to get activated right now. And I will talk about that as we go into, or as I start doing the sign by sign breakdown for the season ahead, not the month ahead, but the season ahead. According to your ascendant, I will talk about the 0 point of Cancer and what that might mean. But these 0 points, these cross points of 0 Aries, 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, and 0 Capricorn are important. And when we're talking about 1 point on a polarity, by default, we also talk about the other point on the same polarity. So, you can't do one without the other. A bit like with the ascendant and the descendant, every time you define yourself, which is very much an ascendant thing, other people are having a reaction to your new position. And when people in your life change, that has a knock-on effect on you. And of course, everything that you are at home has a knock-on effect. So all of these points are somehow activated. So, now that the sun is coming to 0 degrees in the sign of Cancer, that sun will also be opposing the 0 degrees Capricorn in your chart, and it will be in a square to the Aries 0 point and also the Libra. So everything gets activated at this point. So what I'm going to do in this first part, I don't know if any of that made sense. I kind of hope it does. And if it doesn't, write something in the field below and say, oh my God, Louisa, what the hell were you on about? And I will try to explain it. But, I'm just sort of saying it as it all occurs to me. These are, I think, important points, points to be honored, points to be understood. And then when we translate it back into our own chart, you might have a planet that's at 0 degrees in the sign of Cancer, or actually 0 degrees of any of the cardinal points. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, and they will absolutely be really, really highlighted. Anyway, in this this video, I'm going to be looking at the month by month breakdown of this season. So I'm going to start at 0 degrees Cancer and talk a little bit about the overall programming, because I think where the planets lie and what the big themes are will determine a lot for the whole season ahead when there's another season chart, you know. So when I do the September equinox, that will sow the seeds for the next season, you know. And I guess, you know, a bit like if you're farming, if you're sowing your seeds and the weather's not quite right or the soil's not right, the temperature, you can almost guarantee that you're not going to get the same yield that you would get if the soil was just right. So I see that the soil is the planetary picture at the time that we go into this new season. So I will talk about that. And then I will also talk about, you know, the micro season within that, you know, so when the sun gets to 0 degrees Leo for that following month, and then when the sun gets to the sign of 0 degrees Virgo, and that will take us to the end of the season. So hopefully you'll get a good little overview about it. They'll give you some clues about how you might experience it. And in that, I will talk about the full moons and new moons, and how they're laid out. And then in the second part of this video, I'm going to do it on, do a little forecast based on each ascending sign and how it might occur, like what parts of your life are being activated right now and how you might choose to use that energy. So there we go. Before I go any further, I just want to thank everyone that sponsors this channel, because I really appreciate you. So thank you to all of you. In fact, I'm going to name you all. Thank you, Lisa Kim, Lenica G, Rocky, Amy Briffa, Nubianette, Jenny Ann Slater, Anne Burrell Cox, 5D on Earth, Colleen, Natalie Dawns, Coleman, Parag, the Global Nobles, Castle in the Sky, Plooney, I'm Just Nicole, JJ Austin, Texas, Sarah Taylor, Jodie T. Duck, Brogan, Irene 157, Rosanna Hunt, Terry, aka Bluebell, Yvonne Perry, Splunky, Lorraine, and Gemma B. I don't think I've ever named you all, but thank you so much for your previous donations, your current donations. Where's Nubianette? Where is Nubianette? She should be. Oh, she is on there. Phew. For a moment there, I thought I'd left somebody off. So yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It really makes a difference. And if you wanted to sponsor as well, you can see in the link below. You can sponsor me via YouTube, or even just give me a regular donation or a one-off donation using my buymeacoffee.com link. Entirely your choice. And if you do, thank you very much. But anyway, let's actually get let's go through this. So the first things that are coming up for me now, this looks like a whole heap of text. So please, you know, I was just like laying it out. I will explain it. So the big news for this season, I think the first thing to be mindful of is we are going into the retrograde season very soon. And at the start of summer or winter, wherever you are, Pluto is already retrograde. So I always think Pluto is very much about power and very much about like overall control, because it does appear that, like, if Pluto at some level represents the death of our ego, the death of us, you know, at some level Pluto seems to be quite absolute. So it's interesting that, you know, at the start of this season, Pluto is retrograde the whole time. I always think when Pluto is retrograde, there is something about the absolutes that are being challenged. You know, there is something new that we are learning about the absolutes in life. And so, you know, we might be rewinding some of our viewpoints on things that were absolute for us that we couldn't budge on, you know, things that seemed really, really important. I also think we do look deeper at things like death and dying during these times. We don't just take it as read it happens. We want to know some of the deeper questions. You know, it's begging us to look at what we're trying to control, why we're trying to control it, and is there another way of doing it? And so I always think that power doesn't seem quite so powerful, and also that there's something going on behind the scenes. You know, we are reworking things, and ultimately I think the people who might appear to have the steering wheel of this whole human society, to me it looks like they've all got quite a few things going on behind the scenes that is quite secretive. Obviously secrets are quite big with Pluto, so there's a lot that's hidden and being worked on behind the scenes, and you might, like I said, be working on some kind of master plan for yourself and your life and how you're going. Now, by the end of this season, Pluto is joined by Chiron, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn. They'll all be retrograde. And now I always find, and then the following month, Jupiter joins them. So I always find that, when you've got the three outer planets, that's Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, when they're retrograde, to me, it feels like things seem to stand still a little bit. Nothing really like completely moves forward. It just feels like things are just being held back. And then when all the planets start to go direct again, all of a sudden things start moving quite quickly. And so I sometimes think it almost feels like we're on a ship. It's funny how I'm using this ship analogy quite a bit, like the idea that there's an anchor point, during these times. I think, with these big driving and unconscious planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, I feel like we're just in the water, but not really motoring. We're in it, we're experiencing it, we're not quite sure what to do. And I think that translates down to us. The outer planets are very much about, what are the big unconscious drivers in the world? What about human consciousness that we can't all necessarily tap into all the time? And we see it showing up through our politics and world politics and different ideas and religions and spirituality and this, that, and the other. And when these planets connect with our internal planets, our Sun, our Moon, our Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and also on our angles, we get a sense of that consciousness. It kind of filters through to us. So we're kind of rudderless at the moment, kind of not quite sure what's going on. And it's a perfect time to, revisit your own plans. If you're feeling a bit rudderless at the moment, it's time to dream. It's time to imagine and create. And on that, I should say later on in this season, Mercury goes retrograde when our thinking is kind of stopped. We're not so much in rational thought, though this retrograde does actually start in the sign of Mercury. It's in one of the signs of Mercury. It starts in the sign of Virgo, where Mercury has rulership at 4 degrees. And then it works its way back to 21 degrees of Leo. So, as Mercury is going retrograde, it's saying, halt, stop right there with your rationalizations, Virgo energy. It's really saying, hang on a second, why is our mind so full of rationalized ideas, judgments, schedules, organizing things and trying to be really efficient and officious sometimes. And I make that point really sort of clearly, officious, not vicious. Don't want anyone to think that, I'm suggesting that Virgo's vicious or anything like that, but officious, like the idea of being efficiently kind of to the point and quite, this has to be done correctly. And the Virgo energy, especially with Mercury there, we might be in a stage where we're not suffering fools gladly. But anyway, as Mercury comes retrograde into the sign of Leo, our thoughts start to become a little less charge, like let's charge into the future. Come on, let's go. And it becomes a bit more creative, a little bit more laissez-faire, a little bit more dynamic, I would say. So, I think our thinking needs to come back, and you might choose to start this whole process of reimagination now. Why wait until Mercury goes retrograde on the 4th of August? Start it now. It does feel like we're a bit rudderless, and it's the summer holidays, or it soon is, if it's not already, where you are, or possibly the winter holidays. I mean, in Europe, things are gearing up. The schools are chucking out, and in England, the schools will stop as we get to, I think, July. It doesn't happen quite so soon as it does here, but during these holidays, a lot of cultures do have a lot of time off. People start to have 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off. They start to think about how they can change their pace. And we've got the Olympics. There is lots of things here kind of emphasizing the need to just stop. I often find, in particular when I've looked at very strong astrological aspects, that they seem to be a lot more active at every other time of the year. But if those particular aspects happen during the summer, when a lot of governments kind of go on to a sort of skeleton regime, because people are going on holiday and things, not so much goes on during this time. And then bring on September, when everyone's starting to get back to business and all of a sudden things start moving again. So this is the time to be dreamy. This is the time to think, okay, well, nothing's really moving so much anymore. Let's just take a deep breather and use this energy. So yeah, creativity is, I think, quite important at this time. And then when you apply it to the idea of your origins, your anchoring, your family, your home, and your sense of belonging, like you might be deciding, how can I come back into my family? How can I feel the sense of belonging? How can I connect back into this and slow right down? How can I reprogram some of my attitudes and behaviors that have come from my family, where I've learnt to be officious or where I've learnt to rush. How can I come back and actually be a bit more creative with this and a bit more joyful with this? So there's just some thoughts. Another big news, obviously Jupiter's in Gemini now and it's moving quite quickly and freely. I think that, when Jupiter does transition into a new sign, it still feels quite new and fresh for a good month after. So Jupiter in Gemini is still starting to express itself. I do think there's going to be some very big news items, and a lot of them that come out boom, 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 and possibly challenge us in quite a big way. Jupiter is still in a trine to Pluto until the end of the first week in July. So we've got this quite magnificent growth energy that's quite transforming. And I spoke about the outrageousness of power and how power and power stories, and in particular financial stories that might involve double dealings and dirt and grime, all sort of Pluto things, things to do with medical because of death and dying, and also suppression and secrets, again another sort of real Pluto theme, and then money, vast amounts of money. So it's like all the kind of Scorpio subjects, and think of the 8th house at the place of secrets, sex, taxes, other people's business, judgments. All of those things have been magnified with Jupiter and Pluto in the trine. And, at the time of I think it was the full moon that I spoke about, I think I lost a few subscribers then because because in reporting what I was observing, people were getting very triggered by it. And obviously, it's just my own, what I'm observing. I'm not necessarily saying this is how it is or how I judge it is, but the Jupiter trine Pluto, the ideas of power becoming so magnificent or so big and so bold because Jupiter's really inflating it. So that's still going on, and hopefully will calm down a little bit as we go into July. Jupiter is coming into a square with Saturn. That's pretty big news because the last time that happened was back in 2016, I think, off the top of my head. I don't know if I've got it on my notes. Let's just have a look. My notes look so random. It just looks like someone's crawled over the page, scribbled like a 3-year-old. So I can't actually confirm that. Oh, yeah, there it is. Since May 2016. So, Jupiter is coming into that square with Saturn. It hasn't been it doesn't have this square going on that often, but it's likely to bring in a very strong theme this season and next season and into the early spring. Jupiter square Saturns are a little bit tricky because it's like driving a car with your foot on the brake or with a handbrake on. Jupiter wants to move forwards and expand, and Saturn wants to rein it back in and stop and like harness things down. So that's going to be an interesting thing that starts coming in mid-July. I've mentioned the Mercury retrograde. Then we got the Jupiter square Saturn exactly on August the 19th. I do see that as a bit of a standstill point. And just as that's also happening, like Pluto, as I said at the start, he's going retrograde all this season. And actually on the 1st of September, Pluto goes back into Capricorn for the very last time in our lifetime. Unless, we have some medical advances and learn how to live beyond that. But, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So Pluto going into the sign of Capricorn, we're getting the last ditch attempts of big power, of big corporate power, of big finance, big banks, big this, that, and the other. All those Capricorn edicts and like behemoths that have, and I would put media in that as well. You know, all those things that have kind of driven the planet, the plane, however you look at it, even all of those things that have driven us crazy to distraction, into these really big stories, and kind of herded us in. If you think about it, like we've been living in the time of big business, you know, where, you know, the likes of a business have grown exponentially. They've grown bigger than actual countries. You know, some of these big companies have a lot more money, a lot more employees than actual countries have. I mean, how can that possibly happen? And yet it has happened, you know, when Pluto was in the sign of Capricorn. So, you know, these big behemoths, these big organizations, these big corporations, all very Capricorn, insurance and banking, the military, the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical complex, all of these big things are getting their last shot of power, their last opportunity to, I don't know, put their tentacles out there and grab some more power. And, you know, because I do think a lot of these, you know, even like I mean, obviously Google gets a good and a bad rep at the same time, you know, and all of these things, you know, will have different ideas about. You know, some of you might like the military more than the pharmaceutical and this, that, and the other. And some people that are like you might think, oh my God, I don't like any of it. It's all controlling me by the short and curlies, you know. And I even wonder if that's even a phrase that people can understand now. You know, that's referring to when people have pubic hair. Oh my God, where is this video going? We're now living in times where people, any kind of body hair gets shaved off at a moment's notice. Like, humanity's changed so much in 50 years. So anyway, short and curlies, that might not be relevant, but, you know, anything that has held power over people for so long, even if it seems benign, you know, that when you want to pay a gas bill, you can't just get the money out of your bank and go and see somebody and pay it. You now have to have an app. You have to sign into the app. You have to sign in with like 3 different forms of security, and it might hark back to your Google profile or Facebook or whatever, you know, like there's all these little fingers in pies kind of like getting its control over you. So I do think as Pluto goes into Capricorn for the last time, up until it goes into Aquarius finally, on I think November the 19th, November the 20th, we are likely to get a much bigger shot of this energy really trying to reassert itself. And yeah, so yeah, what could we use this season for? I think get really good in yourself, get really strong, get really creative, really start to enjoy yourself, enjoy being yourself. Start to think, okay, well, there's a lot of things I can't change in this world, but boy, oh boy, there's so much that I can change about me. And that's the only thing I've got any kind of control over. So, you know, control to me feels like something to explore. So Pluto's retrograde, we can explore our own levels of control, where we might want to have it, and where we might want to just say, you know, I can't control this. This is out of my control. And actually, as I let this go, it's freeing me up to do things that I can control. That's a nice thought. So, yes, as I go through each of these months, I'm going to talk about the full moon, the new moon, in the Cancer period, you know, so from when the sun is at 0 degrees Cancer right the way through to 29 degrees in Cancer, we have got the full moon, a new moon, and a full moon. We've got 2 full moons in the sign of Capricorn. Let's go there now and see this on a chart. So we're going into the next season. The sun's in Cancer at 0 degrees. This is the chart for when that happens. So this is the sort of formula for this new season ahead. So the sun is at 0 degrees in the sign of Cancer. It's in a conjunction to both Venus and Mercury. They are both known as being under the beams of the sun. You know, they're quite close to the sun, so they're not really fully empowered. You know, they're not firing on all cylinders as they might usually do. Yeah, it feels like everything to do with feelings and thoughts are almost kind of consumed by the sun right now, and the sun's need to understand origins, anchoring where we belong, and so on and so forth. It wouldn't be surprising at all if during this time, you know, people from different parts of your family get back in touch. If you've been out of touch, that all of a sudden people come home. I notice in Portugal, this is the time when we have so many visitors coming to our shores, but a lot of them are actually visiting granny. So the Portuguese are so well traveled where I live. So the grandma, the great grandma, they might still be in Portugal in this great big homestead, and all of a sudden we have Canadians, South Africans, Americans, people from all walks of life who are Portuguese by origin, coming back to the motherland, coming back to where they belong. So it's that feeling. So whether you're actually doing it during the summer holidays, or you're actually just thinking, okay, like, where is that idea of where I belong, where I started, the origin, where did you come from? These are all really, really big questions. So another thing for this, I would say, is the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius as we go into this. So there is also this curiosity. So yes, there is this preoccupation with where we belong, where we came from. Who are we? What is the mystery of humanity? And yet at the same time, there is this kind of questing, curiosity, a sense of adventure, a sense of, actually, we don't have to play it so safe, yeah. So I like that, the idea of finding your safety, but then being a bit blasé about it. If you've got moon in Sagittarius, or if you've got a particularly strong Sagittarius energy about you, the chances are you are a little bit careless at times. You kind of throw caution to the wind, and you're like, oh, let's find out. So there is also that going on, and I think actually when we do that, and we live without such firm controls over ourselves, we actually learn more about ourselves by putting ourselves slightly at risk. So it's almost like, and I'm not suggesting how you live your life. If you do that and it goes wrong, you say, but she said, I'm not doing it for that reason. You are absolutely the rulers, the masters of your own ship, your own destiny. And I noticed that when we throw caution to the wind somewhat, we learn so much about ourselves. We challenge ourselves, we surprise and delight ourselves sometimes. And then we might be relieved, we have a much better sense of what safety we need. And we might actually be grateful for it too. And actually, I would say, with the sun in Cancer, I think we can work on our thanks and our gratitude. The sun in Cancer is very much about knowing what I think is right and good at some level. And it's kind of nurturing. It's nurturing energy, like thanking the mum. I mean, whether you have a great relationship with your mum or not, thanking the idea of the mother, not just your mum. I do think we come into these lives and we have lots to work out with our parents, and with our children. But you might be thanking your mum, your grandmother, your great grandmother, your whole family line. You wouldn't be here without the genetic inheritance that has been passed down. And I think the moon in Sagittarius, I think is kind of grateful, and not necessarily grateful, but kind of expanded in thanks. The sign of Sagittarius is actually known for being a bit of being in wanderlust, being in this kind of lust for life, this kind of, I think an optimism. And I think an optimism is like a hopefulness, a thankfulness, so this could be a time when gratitude really becomes part of your practice. If you have a practice, and if you don't have a practice, then gratitude would be a really great one to have, especially, if you believe in things like the law of attraction, the Sagittarius moon, and then the knowing of who you really are, would be really magnificent to help you get on that path. So this is really capturing my attention. And just as a little side note, I'm going to be recording a lot about this. I'm working on this at the moment. So, Neptune is precariously, it's like, where is Neptune? There's Neptune at 29 degrees 54. He doesn't get into the sign of Aries just yet, but he's almost there. Neptune has been at 29 degrees for a short while now, and is going to be dancing around this 0 point Aries energy for a really long time. So he's transitioning in March, I think the 30th of March 2025, and I might have got that date wrong, unless I've got it written down in front of me. It's really hard for me to remember, but March 2025, Neptune is heading into Aries, then dances back and goes back. And he does it 3 times. In 2025, Saturn is also going to come over this point, but he's not quite there yet. And in the winter period, we've also got the North Node coming back this way, and will cross over that 0 point, and connect with Neptune. So this 0 point in Aries is also very important because it's also highlighted at the same time as the Sun at 0 degrees in the sign of Cancer. So this 0 point Aries energy is about the identity, and this is about our origins. Like, where did we come from to us to be even born? Like, we can't be born without the origins, without the genetic material, without the people that had the intention to birth us. They come before us. So, we have our origins that we have sprung from, and at the same time our identity is absolutely really like top news as well. It's our identity, our body, and how all that sort of plays out. So these are absolutely really, really big themes, and it's going on this whole time. This is sowing the seeds for this next season, and Neptune is going to be around this point the whole season, literally right now until the beginning of next year and beyond. It's big. So Neptune is dissolving. He's dissolving all the old patterns of our identity. And if you think, let's take that not just about us as individuals, but us as a collective humanity, it's big. So yes, our attention is on origins at the moment, at a time when the cumulative identity of humanity is being dissolved. And I know that there's going to be so many people kind of cheering this on and saying, yeah, we don't have to have this kind of patriarchal idea of gender or nationality or any different way that we can identify ourselves. And then there's going to be some people that are saying, oh, well, that's terrible, because how do we know how to be if we don't have our identifiers as a reference point? So I don't know how that feels to you, but we are living in times where it's happening anyway. We are living in times where being human is being redesigned, rethought of, reimagined, and completely dissolved. And it will reemerge. And a new sense of who we are will reemerge as, Neptune goes over this Aries point next year. But it's like we're in a birthing canal right now, not knowing who's going to be born, which being is coming out. But yeah, this is pretty profound. So again, we are considering our origins, and, maybe you are considering, well, I know my origins, and I also know scientific origins. I also know cultural origins. I also know natural origins. The more you can connect to what you think is an anchor point or an origin, I think the easier it might be to, consider how you might want to change and flex and flow. Everything has all the plants. I've got plants behind me. I love plants, as you might know. They've all got roots. Everything is about our roots. So yeah, big stuff. And then also during this time, Pluto is in a trine to Uranus and Jupiter. So it's pretty changed. Like, Pluto here is really keeping in his trine to Uranus. That pattern is definitely persistent throughout this whole period. So Uranus is about change and Pluto is about control and transformation. We are going through this very controlled transformation, where we are going through some very big changes. It's huge. I actually really like this trine. I find it very useful. And speaking of that particular trine between Pluto and Uranus, it's also worth noting that we've got these 2 full moons in the sign of Capricorn, whilst the sun is in Cancer, and also we've got a new moon in Cancer. Now, what's significant is the full moon that's happening on the 22nd of June, and you can actually watch that video. I've already recorded something about that, and it's pretty cosmic. It's got some really, really big themes in it, and many of which are sort of picked up, with the solstice message, because they're just happening 2 days apart. But it's really starting us on a season. This full moon in Capricorn. The moon in Capricorn wants to be patient. It bides its time, even though it's a full moon. So it's very clever. It's very strategic. And as it comes into the second full moon in Capricorn on the 21st of July, just before the sun goes into the sign of Leo, it's actually in a conjunction with Pluto. So, it's really, really picking up and activating this Pluto trine to Uranus. So everything to do with transformation and innovation is really, really highlighted. If you've got, something around 25 degrees to 29 degrees in the sign of Taurus, if you've got something in this area in the sign of Capricorn, these parts of your chart are going to be really lit up. If you've got those parts, if you've got something, between 25 degrees and 29 degrees of the sign of Virgo as well, that will be trining, what you've got here. So, really look at your charts. If you've got something, 25 to 29 degrees in the earth signs, if you've got something between 0 to say 4 or 5 degrees in the air signs, they're all going to be really lit up by this second full moon in July, and everything to do with being in control, transforming something, having a lot of determination. It's quite useful. If you've got plans right now that you're wanting to make, you could get a lot done in this first part of the new season, so it really feels like you could set off this new season with an intention on the full moon on the 22nd, especially if it's got some form of persistence attached to it. If you've got something you need to be persistent, dedicated, something you need to take your time on, something you might need to really prove your worth on, you've got a really good clear month to work on it. And as you're finalizing it or coming to the end or a completion of it, or like bringing it to its fullest, which again is a full moon theme, things get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, then it's perfect. It's really lined up. These two very industrious full moons in Capricorn are really, really helpful. And of course, thereafter, the moon goes into Aquarius, the sun goes into the sign of Leo, and it's a perfect time to start releasing things then. And then obviously you might be looking more towards the new moon in Leo, which is in the next slide. I'll look at that in a minute. But the new moon in Cancer around the 5th of July is also, really going to be radiating out these themes of home, these themes of belonging, these themes of origin, these themes of tradition. In fact, one thing I could say about Cancer and Capricorn, they're both quite traditional. They're both quite set in their ways. They're both have an appreciation of history somehow. Cancer with the emotional stories, the emotional inheritance that they've got, and Capricorn in terms of the financial, the practical, the stable, and the sort of facts of the history. So this like coming month with its two full moons in Capricorn, its new moon in Cancer, the fact we've got the changing of the season, and so many other really, really big themes going on. I just think this is a month where we might want to stabilize somewhat. If you think about spring, it's been pretty gung-ho. It's been pretty charged, pretty fast. Things have been moving really all over the place. So this to me is a time to regroup and maybe, channel some of the advice you might have had from your grandparents, channel your ancestors a little bit, connect in, what is what's best right now, and what might have also had some special I don't know, there's something special. What was has led to where you are right now. So I think it's important to recognize it's in the past, so it's obviously not meant to be here. However, it's led to you being here right now. So there is something about it that could be useful to check in with. Anyway, let's move on to the Leo side of this next season. And really what, this is the chart from the moment when the sun goes into the sign of Leo. And really what I want to point out here, because obviously you will get another forecast before that happens anyway. The new moon is on the 4th. It's around 12 degrees in the sign of Leo. So again, if you've got something in the fixed signs, so Aquarius, Leo, Taurus and Scorpio, if you've got something, say, between 8 and 15 or 16 degrees in one of those fixed signs, this is likely to really activate something in your chart. And because, it would either be in a conjunction, an opposition, or a square, it would be quite dynamic. I actually find the square activations, like where something is making a square to one of your natal planets, I find these very, very motivating and difficult, not necessarily easy, but it almost brings you a challenge that if you can get through, or when you get through, you've kind of raised the game a little bit. I'm quite a big fan of homeopathic healing, and I've had a homeopathic doctor. He's like a family doctor actually for well over I'd say well over a decade. He's been involved in our family's healing. And one of the things he always said to me, in terms of a baby or a small child having an illness, and you might know this if you've got children, you'll know this. I've observed it with my own children. It's like when they get ill, their whole body and their immune system gets challenged somehow, and they usually grow from it. Now, what I mean, I don't mean they have a growth spurt necessarily, but when someone recovers, because all of a sudden they start to get irritable, they start to get a bit gobby, they start to be quite animated, and so on and so forth. But in particular with small children, after a period of time that kind of knocks them out a little bit, they seem to shoot up in stature, in intellectual stature. All of a sudden new skills kind of drop in. And I think there is something of that with these challenges that we get with the square energy. It kind of knocks us sideways. It knocks us out of our, out of our concerns, maybe, because it kind of impacts us. And in that moment where it's impacting us, and we're maybe not expecting it, something else drops in. Is it like an act of survival? Do we activate a part of us that allows us to learn a new skill? I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I do know that when I get a challenge from a square, even though it feels like maybe I've had some kind of emotional illness or a physical illness, it just puts me off my game somewhat. As I get through it, all of a sudden I shoot forward fast. And that's what I really think is quite helpful. So if your new moon is in one of these positions, it could be really, really useful. Now, if you've got planets in the fire signs between 8 and 16 degrees, let's say, then that's going to be quite inspiring, quite motivating. So it could really get you moving forwards. So it's worth paying attention to. Now, something else that I'm quite interested in is this full moon on the 19th of August. And so that's showing up right at the tail end of Aquarius. That's going to be in a square to Uranus. So any of the themes that we're picking up for you around the time of the Uranus and Jupiter conjunction are likely to come up, anytime. I always think that whatever Uranus is going through, when, that, like in this instance, if the full moon is connecting with a planet, any of those recent aspects with that particular planet kind of get a little a nod to them. It's almost like you're nodding to some of the energetic changes and shifts you've been through. So you might consider that this full moon in a square to Uranus is reminding you of the busyness of the end of April, the idea generations that may well have gone on because of the Jupiter and Uranus conjunction. And it's also nodding in the direction of the trine between Pluto to Uranus, which is ongoing. You know, it's really, really encouraging innovation and transformation. So I really do see that this full moon, whilst it might feel a bit tight, you know, and it might feel a bit shocking, it can absolutely bring out the best in you. So, you know, I just think be ready for it, you know, like enjoy it. Now, while I'm talking about that, you know, Jupiter and Saturn start to come into this square, you know, and they're getting stronger and stronger in this square all month. And so you may well find that some of the frustrations that are happening with squares and oppositions, you know, in particular around the time of the full moon, is also because, you know, Jupiter is wanting to expand, Saturn is wanting to contract, and they're working in such a way that it's really difficult to move forwards at great pace without something kind of dragging you back. So, you know, it's worth just being moderate. I think that's one of the things that we get taught with this is it's okay to be moderate. It's okay to take our time. It's okay to work through this. One of the good things about this, the last time Jupiter and Saturn came into a square was in 2016. I can't remember where they were. I know they were in the cardinal signs because where they actually went into a grand square in that year in 2015, I think, with Pluto. And I can't remember. And there was the Sun, then Mercury, then Venus. Yeah, so there was this grand cardinal square, which I really remember talking about. But Jupiter in a square to Saturn, they were in a cardinal. That they are quite unmovable. You know, they feel really quite strong and harsh and quite shocking. Whereas Jupiter and Saturn in their square all month now, you know, they're in mutable signs which do flex. And, you know, so I do think, you know, this is a lot more manageable than previous ones. Thank goodness they don't come along that often. And even though I said that, thank goodness they don't come along that often, you know, there is a lesson. You know, it is teaching us to take our time. It's teaching us to, you know, maybe not stop things completely, but maybe not rushing ahead. It's teaching us there's something for us to learn about discernment, and maybe about the flexibility involved in that. So, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot that I've got to say about that, you know, as I start considering it more, and I will be definitely doing a video about that. Anyway, as we go into the last part of the season, the third part of the season, when the sun goes into the sign of Virgo, by that time, we've got all these these retrogrades kicking in. So I said at the start of the season, Pluto was retrograde. And I said that by the end of the season, you know, there's a lot retrograde. You know, and so we've got Pluto retrograde, we've got Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde, Chiron retrograde, and we've also got the Mercury retrograde, which starts the 4th to the 28th of August. So yeah, this is going to be quite interesting, especially seeing as Mercury is actually starting the retrograde at 4 degrees in the sign of Virgo, and is going back into the sign of Leo. So this is, you know, Mercury's own sign he's going retrograde in. It's going to be interesting. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, yeah. This is the thing that I think is going to take up quite a lot of attention, actually, as we're going into the Virgo season, and that is the full moon, which is also a partial lunar eclipse. So in the last part of this current season that we're going into, we've got the second part of the eclipse season starting. How could I forget that? And just to get it off to a good start, we've got the full moon, which happens to be in Pisces, in a conjunction with Neptune. So we've got the sun at the tail end of Virgo, and we've got the moon at the tail end of Pisces. So all those things that I was talking about right at the start, you know, talking about the idea of the dissolution of humanity, or what is the idea about humanity, what are we losing about our identity right now, all of those issues are likely to really come to the fore. And I think as this second part of the, you know, eclipse season, you know, there are two clearly defined eclipse seasons each year. as we head into the second and last one, it's really bringing up the identity issues in a big way. So that's really going to be quite interesting. So that brings me to the end of part 1 of this solstice special. I hope that was helpful to you in kind of laying out what's coming up, the big themes, what those big themes might mean to us, and also, to us as a collection of people, like humanity. Part 2, which I promised right at the start, where I do the sign by sign breakdown and the sign by sign forecast. I'm actually going to release them separately. I'm just being a bit playful, not sure how it's going to go, whether it's going to be useful or not, but let me know what your preference is. If you want some extra support in the meantime, though, then just check out the links in the description below the video. I put in links to my online calendar, and if you want to work with me, literally just click on the link that works best for you, find a date in my diary, and then invite me to meet you. And it's as simple as that. Anyway, lots of love to you. Take care and welcome to your new season. Much love.